Welcome to Open Door. My guest is Ernestine Ray. She's an education cultural consultant and a number of other things which we will explore in this program. Welcome to Open Door, Ernestine.
Well, glad that you would like to have me. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, we were having conversation the other day, and you kept dropping bombshells on me, and I just thought as I was listening to you, like, she's got a very fascinating story, and this show was all about sharing stories. So we're going to share the Ernestine Ray story. In our conversation, you told me that you had visited 33 countries. You told me that you were able to bring your mother along to several of those countries. And you also told me that at once you were teaching at CCNY and that one of your colleagues was Professor James Small. So with all of that, I'm thinking to myself, and on top of everything else, you've lived in Ghana, which is actually one of my favorite places in the world. So this is a conversation that needed to happen. So why don't we just start by talking about your background, where you're from, you know, the education piece, and then we can get into some of the elaborate details of your great and fabulous life.
Okay, well, you know, it's pretty interesting. I would like to start with my earlier years, and I was diagnosed as learning disabled. And the reason why I wanted to start with that is because we are actually labeled sometimes erroneously, particularly in our community. And, you know, if we don't have mentors around us or people that will motivate us, inspire us, and lift us up, that, you know, we are at a disadvantage. And so, you know, thankfully, I had a lot of people around me that knew that I had more to give than what meets the eye. And so I was labeled earlier on in my life, and they said, well, you know, let's put her in a class for special needs. And I was able to roam around the school because I was not a difficult student. I wasn't one that would harm anyone. And so every now and then I, you know, could go pick up myself and go to the library, look at books, pictures, and so forth. I really didn't learn how to read until about third grade. My parents would read to me what time they had, because we come from very humble beginnings, and they seem to have always been working, but tried their very best to make something more of what they thought I could become. And so I remember I am a lover of my people and of the motherland. And how that began and what kind of directed the road that I took in life was I remembered being in, I think it was second or third grade. It was third grade. And I had a teacher named Mrs. Schultz, and she said something. Remember, I was in special needs, so she mentioned something about people living in trees. And, you know, these people had tails. And I was very curious, you know. I was like, well, these people look like me, you know. And I don't know, she might have been joking, but, you know, when you're young, you're very impressionable. And you listen, we listen more when we're younger than people think we're listening. We pick up things, you know, we model after certain things as well. And I said to myself, you know, I want to know some more about those people that live in those trees. And, you know, I remember coming home and asking my dad, you know, about these people. And he said, you know, he kind of just brushed me off, and, you know, because everybody was saying that I was so slow, that, you know, he says, you know, go away with that, you know, stop being so silly. But I was really serious. I wanted to know more about these people that look like me in these books, because that was pretty much all I saw that in books, that people that looked like me during that time. And so I remember one day going to the library, and I asked the librarian, you know, can you tell me about the people that live in the trees and that have these tails and so forth and so on, whatever I had heard from this teacher. And she looked at me and then she kind of chuckled. She said, wait a minute, who are you talking about? And I said, well, she said, I think I know what it is that you're speaking of. So she brought this book towards me and said, are you talking about these people? I said, oh my goodness, yes, yes, yes. And there was like beautiful surrounding. There was lush trees and, greenery, and these people had beautiful clothing on, and I was just enthralled with what they look like, and they look like me. Oh my goodness, how beautiful is this, And then she said, they don't live in trees. They don't have tails. These are people from Africa. Now, remember, I had not learned how to read much, and not really didn't learn too much of anything because not much was expected of me. And when you don't expect things from young people, you get what you give out, which is nothing leaves nothing, right? So anyway, she started telling me a little bit about it, and then I said to her, what is this? What is that? She started teaching me how to read phonetically. So I was so excited. Every day when I could, I would sneak out and try and go to the library. And she was so kind that, she was showing me, talking about, where these people are from. And she said Africa. And oh my goodness, all I could think about was, I'm going to go to Africa. One day I'm going to, even if it's just traveling through books and magazines and pictures, and I'm going to learn more about these people than anyone else. This is my, it was almost like I decided that was my purpose in life, to explore and know more about Africa, because I related to it because the imagery more so than anything else. And so I started learning how to read phonetically, and that began my quest to want to know all about Africa. I wouldn't read anything or listen to anything unless it was about Africa. And so they told my mom and dad that I could probably do a lot with my hands and my feet, but not much with my brain or my mind. And so my parents really working very hard. My mom came up doing domestic work from Jamaica. My dad was Native American and half African American. His mother was Blackfoot and Seminole, which is a very unusual combination. And so we came from a very interesting background, and a lot of proverbs were used when I was younger, for example, my mom used to say, if you believe in yourself, you can do almost anything. And she used to talk about conceive, believe, and achieve. And, this is something that we hear a lot, but that kind of set in my mind, my dad's people were always talking about generations and how we are a composite of all the generations before us. And then, of course, my mom and dad were very kind of African-centered in a sense. They didn't realize they were, but they were. And I would hear proverbs like, if we stand tall, it is because we stand on the backs of those who came before us. So all of these things, of course, brought forward the person that I guess I am today, fortunately or unfortunately. But in any case, and I would say more fortunately than I'm just joking. But anyway, I would not read anything unless it was about Africa, and my quest for Africa began in those early years. I went on they discovered that I wasn't as slow as they thought I was, which were wasted years. But of course, I tried to make up for the years, and I was the darkest in the family. So, I was also hit with, being being called Blackie and nappy head. My sister was the one that had the Native American hair. So I was all of that mixed up in one. It was a very difficult childhood because I was called names all the time, and I didn't really think much of myself. But of course, there were certain things that laid in my head, that stayed in my mind. And as I grew older, I began to blossom and realize that I'm much better than, most people have thought of me. And I began to I wanted to prove everyone, I wanted to prove that I was more than what people thought I was. So long story short, I end up with 5 degrees and all summa cum laude or, magna cum laude. And it was amazing to me as much as it was amazing to others. I remember going back to my grade school years after to find those teachers that had labeled me. One of the reasons why I went into education because of that labeling, and I wanted to be able to stop all of that labeling that was done in a lot of our schools in our neighborhood where we were not teaching our own children. So, but then later on, as I grew a little bit older, I got a full scholarship to go to medical school, and I also had a couple of scholarships, academic scholarships, to go to the college of my choice. I decided not to go to medical school because I realized I don't have the stomach for it. I was in Ghana. Oh, my first trip to Ghana, by the way, I was 19 years old. And my mom had said to me in much earlier years that when you get to be 18 years old, you will be now an adult and you can make your own decisions. And I never forgot that because when I was 19, I was headed to Africa, not knowing a soul in Africa and not really knowing any much about the different countries, the many countries of Africa. But I end up in Togo because Togo was indeed the cheapest place to visit at the time. So I end up going to Togo, and I got to the airport. When I got to the Togolese airport, my suitcase had fallen apart. I had packed it so heavily because I knew that I would meet people along the way, and my suitcase was pretty much filled with gifts. Well, my suitcase kind of busted open, and there I was at the airport with this heavy suitcase. Didn't have a clue where I was going, and I was the last one in the airport. It was a very small airport, by the way. I was the last one trying to figure out how I'm going to get this suitcase closed and where am I going, and it was getting late, and I met this little woman, and she was very slight of build, 4 feet, maybe 4 feet 8 inches. And I'll never forget, she came over to me. She thought I was an African. So she's speaking to me in Ewe. And she said to me in Ewe, which I know now, the language a little bit, she said, where are you going? Can I help you? Because she realized that I was kind of stuck. And I looked at her and I was baffled because I didn't understand the language. And so then she said to me in French, parlez-vous français? And I said, I knew a little bit of French because I'd studied French in school. And so we tried our best to get through with French, and got to a point where I didn't understand what she was saying. And then I said to her, well, do you speak English? And she looked at me like I had 2 heads because she couldn't believe that I was actually from the States.
That's an amazing story there, and I want to pick up with that when we come back from the break, because I'm there with you. I'm there with you, and I want to get to what it was like for you when you first put your feet on the soil. So we're going to discuss that in a little more detail when we come back. You're listening to Open Door on WOVU 95.9 FM, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station. This is Vince Robinson, and we are speaking with Ernestine Ray, an education cultural consultant. We'll be right back after this. We're back on Open Door with education cultural consultant Ernestine Ray. And before we took the break, she was telling us about her first experience in Africa. She ended up going to Togo because it was the least expensive place to go. She encountered a woman who was there to provide her assistance, and they had a little, I guess, a situation in terms of the language barrier, but somehow they were able to navigate through that. So let's pick it up from there.
All right. Well, she ended up, this woman ended up actually putting my suitcase together for me. She had a kind of like a rope, and she tied the suitcase up and picked it up and threw it up on her head. I mean, she was such a small, I don't think she was even 90 pounds. And, I'm towering over her, and I didn't know what to do, but she just picked it up and put it on her head. And she said to me, "Would you like to come with me?" in French, because we were going back and forth between French and English, and she would forget every now and then, give a little every word in there. And she said, "Would you like to come with me?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." I was so excited to meet someone. When you're young, you just don't have any fears, really, 19 years old. So anyway, I was just so excited to be in Africa. I mean, there I was, and I remember landing, and I was just crying my eyes out. I couldn't believe I was in the motherland. So anyway, I followed her onto what they call a trotro. And a trotro, everybody's on the trotro, including the goats and the chickens, and some of the chairs were at that time were bounded to the floor. Some of them weren't. It was kind of like a makeshift truck from different parts of different vehicles. And it was an interesting ride. And I didn't mind a bit, because I was actually in the motherland. So we got to a point where there was some music playing, and I grew up, but remember they told my mom that, my mom and dad, that I could do things with my hands and my feet. So they put me in dance class. They taught me they bought a sewing machine, taught me how to sew. By the way, I became a designer at 15 with a company in California. They bought a piano. I ended up playing piano for the Bar White Chorus. This is somebody that cannot use their mind or brain, so they said. I end up, having a dance company. And so when I hear music, and especially African music, oh my gosh, I was so excited at that point. And I was listening to the music, and I said to her, that if we could stop at that point and get off and just listen to the music. I heard the drums, the xylophone, and I was the shekere. And so I was like just in seventh heaven. I mean, I couldn't have been in a better place, memorable time in my life, one of the most memorable times in my life. Well, she said, well, we're heading that way. We're going to get off. And so I said, oh my goodness, this poor lady, I'm probably taking her to another whole place that, she hadn't intended to go to, but I was so excited. So I said to her, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I hope I'm not inconveniencing you. And she looked at me. She said, well, this is exactly where we were going. This is my village. I'm like, your village? Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. I'm jumping for joy. And I saw from afar these people. They were dressed so beautifully and so elegantly and so graceful in their movements. And it was a large compound. It's a circular compound, and the people were in a circle dancing. The babies were on their back, and you could smell the scent of some really nice essence called Chrai, which is a really lovely, sweet smelling, group of herbs. And also you could smell the scent of something cooking that was really smelling delicious. And I was just so full. And she said, enter in. When I entered into the compound, they continued to dance, but they came to greet me. And then she said, well, go into the circle. So, I mean, I dance, so, I'm dancing. And funny enough, I knew the dance of what they were doing. And then as I was going, they were taking me around in the inner part of the circle. And as I was going around in the circle, each person that had a baby would hand their baby to me. I would dance with that child a little bit and then give the baby back to, the mother or the father. And, what that whole was what I learned later was that was an initiation into becoming a extended family member of the people in that village. And so that was simply amazing that I was doing the same steps. I could do the same movement, and that, I was just so full I couldn't even sleep that night. So she said to me, well, we prepared your bed for you. I mean, do you want to be inside or outside? Well, I had never seen stars so bright in all my days. So I said, no, I want to sleep outside. So they prepared, it was a very nice evening, and prepared bedding for me outside. And so she came over to sit near me after we ate and everything. And I said to her, how possible is it? How amazing is it that we end up being in a place that was so inspiring that I had dreamt of so many years prior to? And she said, and I said, how did because they were telling me, welcome home, welcome home. And I'm like, how did they know? I mean, what was, what was the occasion that they were celebrating that made it so, opportune for me to be there at such a time as that? And she said, well, we planned your homecoming. And I said, what do you mean you planned my homecoming? She said, 2 weeks ago, we started planning because we knew you were coming. And I was just aghast. I mean, I'm going to tell you, as I'm telling you right now, I am still like, what? How did you know? And, I never got that answer. But something? We are more powerful than we think we are. And we have more gifts than we could ever imagine. And so I just, and I had read about things such of that nature, but just never experienced it. And that was my first experience. That was my orientation, I would say, or my first opening to Africa.
Well, as you describe this experience, Ernestine, it seems as though your life had prepared you for that moment, from your initial fascination with what you found out was Africa, to, the accelerated learning that happened once you discovered that, you weren't what they told you that you were. So, it's not a mystery to me that you would get there and then automatically, your aid comes to the rescue. And then for them to tell you that they had been preparing for your visit, it's like it was a spiritual phenomenon, and I'm sure as you look back on it, you can appreciate it based on what you know. I mean, your middle name is Ma'at. So I'm sure that has something to do with it. But this is just an absolutely fascinating story.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I want to spend some time in Africa, and I don't want to deter you from giving us the rest of that story. But I just needed to mention that it's a spiritual phenomenon that occurred.
Absolutely. And I think from that moment that my life changed forever. Really, because, even the experiences that I had, just, and the way I was treated, I knew I was home. I knew that's where my heart was. And I knew that, that these are my people. And it's something much more than what I had understood prior to that, how important, it is to make that connection and to also have people in your midst that can teach you something that maybe you've never been taught before. I mean, when I came back from that trip, my parents thought that something was wrong with me. I was smiling all the time. I was not a child that smiled a lot because, remember, I had a lot of difficulty in my life. I mean, I couldn't stop smiling. And my mom was like, I heard her on the phone one day talking to my aunt who was kind of in psychology a little bit. And she said, I think something happened. I don't know I'm not too sure what to make of it. She says, I like what I see, but it kind of scares me a little bit.
That someone would just be so happy all the time. What's wrong with your child? Why are you so happy?
Yeah, and even people say to me, even in today's world, and there are many challenges that I face, people are like, wow, look at that smile. And I think that stood with me. That changed, that trip changed my life. And not only that, I realized how our lives are so different in different parts of the world. I mean, these people didn't have a lot. They didn't have, big cars and fancy this and fancy that, but they had such great love and care for each other, and they had so much gratitude. I mean, I learned the true meaning of gratitude when I was there, and how to not waste so much. We waste so much here, and people will wash a piece of aluminum foil 7 times and use that, or they'll use a glass jar that some product came in and use that. They'll use a calabash over and over and over again for so many different reasons, and they had so little, but yet they were so happy, and they cared so much and so deeply about each other and loved each other so much. I mean, it was just a life changer for me.
Yes.
So,
and the other thing that I want to point out, and something that has to be emphasized, is the fact that when you got there, you were welcomed, because that really contradicts the narrative that we get in so many other places, for us to think that they don't want to have anything to do with us. And as a result, we don't want to have anything to do with them. But then you travel across an ocean, you get to a place where you're seeing people you've never seen before, never spoken to before, and they say to you, welcome. I've had that experience in Egypt. I've had that experience in Ghana. I've had that experience in Sudan, so I can testify just as you have. It's a very real thing. You're listening to Open Door on 95.9 FM WOVU. With Vince Robinson and my guest, Ernestine Ray. She's an education cultural consultant, and she also is someone who has been teaching African dance to young folk at some point in her life, and we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about her relationship to one of my personal heroes, Maya Angelou. Today is her birthday, and it's my birthday, too. We'll be right back with more Open Door after this. What can you do in the battle against COVID-19? Your first task, wear a mask, protect yourself and others. Armor up, armor up. Give those hands a 20-second shower with soap and water. Armor up, armor up. Give others space 6 feet just in case. Armor up, armor up. Get good nutrition, ingest for digestion. Armor up, armor up. Vitamin C, D3, and more.
Elderberries, zinc, and echinacea from the store. Get some fresh air. Go climb some stairs. Let go of stress. Make sure you rest. Your breath is the key to life. Strengthen your immune system, follow the guidelines, and win the battle against COVID-19.
Armor up, armor up.
Welcome back to Open Door. My guest is Ernestine Maat Ray. She's an education cultural consultant and a number of other things. So it's really been a treat to relive the experience that you had being in Africa for the first time and wanting to go there for as long as you could remember. Pick up from what happened after you left that experience and move forward.
Okay, so my initiation, which was, I found that was my initiation celebration and welcome, all packed in one, was just simply amazing. I did so many wonderful things. I learned how to cook certain things. I learned the idea of the circular position of the homes and what happens in the village. And, you know, it's kind of like the cycle of life, you know, and that circle, what that represents, you know, the continuation of life and why that village was set up as the way it was. And I mean, and then knowing too that now those children absolutely belong to me and I belong to them. I have now had another extension of my family, and what a beautiful remembrance that was. But I didn't stop there. I was supposed to be in Togo for 3 weeks. And so with all the beautiful things that happened in Togo, they bought me a new suitcase. And I end up meeting, I remember going to a market, the market where they had all these beautiful traditional wares and instruments and carvings and just art. And I remember meeting a young student that was going back to Ghana. And they were there on vacation. And they said, you know, after we spoke a bit, you know, I was kind of very open. It was unusual that I would just speak to anybody and everybody. I was so excited about being in Africa. And so the student finally said to me, would you like to come to Ghana with me? And I said, oh my goodness, yes, 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 yes. In fact, it just makes my heart feel so wonderful as I'm even talking to you about this now. But so I end up in Ghana. And I met the most amazing people in Ghana. And I met, you know, the editor of the Ghanaian Times, and I went to the market there. I went to the Black Star Square. I was in Jamestown. I was all over Ghana. They took me everywhere that I could possibly think. I fell in love with Ghana. And of course, English was the national language there as well, among other, almost 42 other languages and dialects. And so I learned a little bit, you know, from the student. And I was staying at Legon University for a little while with that student. But then I met some other families that I was so open. Anybody that said if I wanted to come and visit, I was right there. And so I ended up meeting a family that was just so kind and loving. And in that family, there was somebody going to Ivory Coast, and they said, would you like to come to Ivory Coast? Being that you're a tourist, you know, and you're, you know, wanting to see everything. I said, oh my goodness, yes. I want to go to Ivory Coast. Oh yes, I heard about the Côte d'Ivoire, you know, and I don't know anybody there. And oh my goodness, yes. So we went to Ivory Coast, and Ivory Coast looked like when I first entered into Ivory Coast, I'm like, wait a minute, am I in Paris? I mean, the roads were different. Every country in and of itself had its own identity. And I mean, we look at, people think of Africa as one country, there are so many continents in Africa, and each has its own underlying and defining qualities and culture and so forth. And so I went to, Cote d'Ivoire is like the fashion industry of the world. And, I was at 15 years old, I was a designer. So, oh my goodness, I was enthralled with everything that Ivory Coast had to offer, and then I met somebody going to Mali, and I'm like, they were like, do you want to go to Mali? It was like every time I went to a country, I would meet someone that was going somewhere else. And oh my goodness, yes. I end up in Mali, and oh my goodness, the culture was so rich. And I end up in Timbuktu. I was all over Mali. I learned a lot about mud cloth and the meaning of the textures and of the cloth, what the symbols meant, and how much of our history was. In fact, all of the countries I had visited, I learned how much our history was in the song and in the dance and in the signs and symbols, even the way they braided their hair. All of that was part of the history and culture of those countries and had great meaning. Mali, I met 3 griots, and it was a kind of a funny story, but I said, I wanted to travel all over Mali. I was only going to be there for a couple of days, and these very elderly men that kept the history of generations past, and they're actually taught from when they're babies to start singing the history and learning, and keeping that history intact. And so, many of us know that Alex Haley went and sought out the griots to get part of his history told about his family. And these men were so amazing. They would be singing the culture. I had to get a translator, of course, and one of the elderly men, he spoke a little bit of English. And in each of the countries, nobody believed that I was from the States until I opened my mouth to speak. But I had a driver's license, an international driver's license that I had gotten from AAA before I left to travel. And I said, well, let me, they were saying that if they had a car, they could take me around. And I'm like, well, I have a, international driver's license. And they said, oh my. Well, then they took me to get a rental car. Big mistake. Because they were driving on the opposite side. So I was so excited. I got in the car and I had no clue what I was doing. And we had a couple of near crashes, and they just said, look, we got to get out of this car before somebody And so we left the car right where it was, and they called someone to come and get the car. We got in a taxi instead, and they just kind of took me around, and they were singing songs, and I asked them to translate those songs for me, and they did translate 1 or 2 of them for me, and I was doing a transcript of all of this and putting it in writing and so forth and so on, and that was just a major experience for me. And we decided we would just wait for the train, and because they were going to Senegal, and I decided to follow them to Senegal. So here we are on the train, and I'm seeing, and what was so beautiful about being on the train, because you can go from village to village, and you can see how people are living in those villages, and that was where I met the Manding people. Beautiful. Oh, I've never seen people so beautiful. Even the men were just, they were like pictures in a frame. Never saw anything like it in my life. And just as dark and beautiful, smooth skin. And I'm like, my people, they are just so beautiful. And I end up going to Maurice Senghor, who was at that time the director of du Ballet du Senegal. And I had known him from the States because my parents at some points were, hosting Africans in our home. And so we had hosted the Ballet du Senegal, some of the members in our home, and they had also met Maurice Senghor, the director du Ballet du Senegal, and he was actually the brother of the president Senghor at the time in Senegal. And so I said to them, please, could you take me to Maurice Senghor, the Ballet du Senegal? And they did. And when I got there, he said to me, he looked at me like I had two heads. He said, what are you doing here? Oh my goodness, it's so great to see you. And I said, well, I started out in Togo and I ended up here. And I told him all my ventures, and he said, are you crazy? He said, you mean you went by road, all of these places, you didn't take the plane? Are you kidding me? He says, does your mother know where you are? Do your parents know where you are? And I said, well, I haven't been able to communicate because the communications have been poor, but they know that, I kind of overstayed my time. And so immediately he said, he took out his phone and he said, you call your parents right now, because he knew them. I mean, and he was like very concerned that, they must be worried. Where have you been, all of this time? And so anyway, but let me backtrack a minute. I end up, when I got to Senegal, I end up actually asking someone where I should go once I get into Senegal, because the griots were going their way. I had to go. I didn't want to keep following them because I wanted different experiences, but also, they were taking care of whatever business they were going to take care of. So I end up at Ente Diop's house. People call him Diop, but it's we call it's Diop. Mm-hmm. I end up at his mother's home. Who would have thought? I had read some of his works, and I was like, I didn't know exactly who. I didn't realize that was the family that I was actually going to. And so I got there, it was very late at night, and they received me. They had been used to receiving foreigners, so-called quote-unquote foreigners. And so basically I had been told about this gentleman that had a shop in Harlem. His name was Ali Abdoulaye. And I had been told that he had moved to Senegal some years ago and was living there, and was so good with the dancing that he became one of the directors of the Ballet du Senegal. So that was one of my goals, to kind of try to find Ali Abdoulaye. Well, the next morning that I had, the night that I had gone in, that's another whole story, but I won't even begin to tell you about what happened that very night, because a lot of interesting things, a lot of spiritual things happened that evening. But that next morning, I was sitting in their kind of like dining area, trying to figure out where do I go from here, because now I'm left with a family that hardly speaks any English. But, their daughters were very, very kind. They, dressed me up as if I was a Senegalese, and we went to the market, and, we were trying to speak as much French as I could. They spoke Wolof, and I learned quite a bit of Wolof while I was even there. But that morning, this gentleman came into their home to pick up his mail. Apparently, he had lived there before, and that was a place where he would pick up his mail. And so when he came in and he sat down, dressed in his Senegalese garb and all, and he was, just kind of staring, looking, and I guess he was wondering, like, who is this person, the stranger that's sitting here? And so he speaks to me in Wolof, and he says, Nangadef. And I said, I had learned the night before that I must say Magik Fiderek, which is, how are you? I'm doing fine, whatever. And then he said to me, ask me my name, and that was as far as I could go because that's all I had learned. And he said, where are you from? What part of Senegal are you from? And I didn't understand what he was asking me. So then I said to him, I went back to my way of trying to figure out what I should speak. And I said, well, do you speak French? In French, parlez-vous français? And he said, he spoke French. He answered me in French. And then I said to him, would you by chance speak English? And he was again floored. You are from where?
Okay. We're going to stop right there, and we're going to pick back up in Senegal with this man that you met that finally figured out that you could communicate in English. We'll be right back with more of the fascinating story of Ernestine Ray when we come back. You're listening to 95.9 FM WOVU. We're back on Open Door with Vince Robinson and my guest Ernestine Ray. And when we left off, we were in Senegal with a fascinating gentleman who finally was able to break through with the English language. Pick it up from there.
Well, he said to me, how long have you been here? I said, I got here last night. And he said to me, how has it been since you came? I said, it's been very interesting. It's been a lot of curiosity of what happened last night. And he asked me about some things that happened last night. I was sleeping in a room that had mostly glass walls, and there was a courtyard, and I could see everything that was going on in the courtyard. And they were doing a lot of spiritual works that evening, and it kind of set me aback a little bit because I didn't quite comprehend everything that was going on. I was a little bit worried. And so I said to him, I'm looking for someone that I was told to look for named Ali Abdullah. And he looked at me and he waited for a minute. And he said, why are you looking for him? And I said, well, I understand that he used to have a shop in Harlem. He says, are you from Harlem? I said, well, no, but I have, I frequent Harlem a lot, and, I go to school near Harlem, CCNY. And so he said to me, so who told you about me? So I started telling him about, a few of the people that I was moving with. And he said, you won't believe this, but I am Ali Abdullah. And I looked at him, and I mean, tears just rolled down my cheek. I said, this trip has been simply amazing. I said, you are Ali Abdullah. What are the chances of me having to go and look for you, but you came to find me? And he said, well, I just came to get my mail, but apparently, I came for other reasons. And I end up going to Gejawai to stay with he and his family.
That is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It was, I have tears in my eyes right now as I'm speaking to you because, sometimes with life, what gets in the way sometimes, and we forget some of those experiences that we've had. And it couldn't have been any better than what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have asked for better moments than what I had in that first trip.
Right. So all of this happens to you while you're in your 20s.
This happened to me when I was 19 years old.
This is all within the 19 year.
This is all in that first trip.
Wow.
I was only supposed to be in Togo, but I just kept traveling. I kept meeting people that asked me if I wanted to come with them, and I kept saying yes.
So we've been together for the balance of about 45 minutes or so, and all we have talked about is 1 year of your life. And there's so much more to what has happened to you since then. And I really don't think we could do it any justice with the time that we have left. So I guess we're going to have to get an abbreviated, accelerated version of all the things that have happened. And you just shared that you were at CCNY, and I said at the top of the hour that you were a colleague of Professor James Small. Just give us, just a brief reflection on your time at CCNY and some of the connections that you made while you were there.
Okay, so how that happened, I actually was in the business up to about up until maybe 18, 19, when I began to realize my own power. I mean, each of us is so powerful. You know, there's a saying, I know it's a lot of people say powerful beyond measure, but we are indeed, each of us, powerful beyond measure. And I was beginning to realize how powerful I was. And, you know, by the time I graduated from high school, I had all these academic scholarships. I had the opportunity to go to any university of my desire. I ended up studying speech pathology and audiology, and end up being a full-time professor at City University in the audiology and speech pathology department. I also, because I took up dance in such an early age, because remember they told my folks that I could do things with my hands and my feet, but not with my mind so much. I don't know what they thought was controlling my feet and my hands, but in any case, I end up being quite a dancer. I end up dancing a little bit with the ballet as well. And also I started teaching dance, African dance at City University. And so those two things, started charting my life from then on. I end up having, at 21, being a full-time professor there. And so from there, I began to understand who I was and whose I was more than anything else. And so I end up, one of the things that I forgot to say is that when I was very, very young, I never thought that I would ever have the ability or the opportunity to travel, because like I said, we come from very humble beginnings. So I always traveled through magazines, pictures, and books. But, that was a dream that was in my heart. And, when the first opportunity as a student, I end up going to Guyana when I was at City University on a work project between Brazil and clearing the forestry in between Brazil and Guyana. And I end up going to several countries in South America as well in that process. And so that began I realized that I can indeed travel, and I end up working for the State Department. I was working on my doctorate when I was in Ghana at the University of Legon. And I never finished I'm all but a dissertation. So basically, I end up traveling. I end up taking a job. I was offered a position. There were so many things that happened in between, but I'll just cut to the chase. I end up being in Ghana at a time when they needed someone to substitute at the American Embassy. And so when they came to me, I said, it was quite revolutionary. And I'm like, I didn't come here to work for the American Embassy. And they sent someone, James Washington, to speak with me. So he was a political attaché, and he was indeed a brother, because they knew they probably couldn't get through to me unless they would send a sister or a brother to talk to me. And he said to me, look, you're a student here. You don't have that much money. You could make some extra money. And I was staying in Jamestown with with twins, Aquele and Akwoko. And Jamestown is considered to be kind of like, the less advantaged area of Ghana, of Accra. And he said to me, you know, these people, you can actually build them a home if you were to just work maybe a month and a half, 2 months, you know. So that intrigued me. And I said, okay, well, give me some time to think about it. But when we were living in that place, we found everything we could do with a plantain. We mashed it, we fried it, we steamed it, we boiled it. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't turn it to a plantain. We didn't have that much money. And I lived in a hut with 20 other people, and we rolled our mats out on the dirt floor every evening. And if we came in late, we would end up being outside, not even under cover. You know, we wouldn't be under the tent part of the hut. So anyway, when he saw where I was living, he said, you know, wow, you know, you could build a home. And so, and even my mother came to visit me because I wasn't coming back home right then. And she came to see what her baby was doing. And when she saw me living there, she said, this is what you reduce yourself to? Your mom and your dad worked so hard to make a change, a difference for you. And this is what you stoop to. And I said, Mom, I love it here. Please, please. So I ended up finding a place for her to stay while she was there. But this James Washington, the political attaché, encouraged me and said, look, you know, just take the job for a month. You'll have some money. You can help these people. And sure enough, I did work for a month and a half. I ended up building a home. It wasn't a grandiose place, but it had a roof over its head. It had indoor, you know, facilities. And I mean, to tell you the honest truth, I mean, I was happier probably than the people that I built it for. I mean, it did something to my head, my heart, my soul, that I could do something like that for someone. So I decided to change my mind on, you know, where I could get funding from and where I could get money from to help people. And so sure enough, the Charge d'Affaires asked me would I go and try and apply because they liked my work ethic while I was there. And I said to them, I would never pass that test because in the back of my mind, when you're young and you are very impressionable, people will tell you certain things and you'll believe it, you know? So I felt like I couldn't pass the test, that I would never pass the test to work with the embassy, but I surely did. I went and took it anyway because I remember the charge almost broke my wrist, said, don't you ever say you could never do anything. And I said, okay. So I went and took the test, and the rest is history. I ended up working for the State Department, and I started out in Ghana, and I ended up with also working for Middle States Association Accreditation Board, which, you know, we accredited American schools all over Africa. I was the only person of color that was working with them at the time. And so I got a chance, between the two positions, I got a chance to work and live in 33 countries, 18 of which were African. There were 5 in South America. There were 5 in Asia, in the Caribbean, and Europe were the remaining ones. And so I got a chance to see the world, and I got a chance to live my dream.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, you know, one thing that really stands out in what you just shared is that your happiness and your joy in life has not been connected to material things. You could be sleeping on a mat in a hut on a dirt floor and be perfectly happy with the circumstances, just knowing that you were where you wanted to be and you were doing what you wanted to do. And I think that really speaks to what you talked about earlier, and that is the power that you have within yourself. I would like to encourage everyone to consider the power that they have within themselves and to realize that at every moment you're living your best moment. Ernestine Ray, it has been an absolute joy to hear your story today, and I know we just barely scratched the surface of all that you have experienced in life, but we are grateful to you and thankful to you that you have had this opportunity to share and that you thought enough of us to do so. Thank you for being our guest on Open Door.
Oh, it was my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Vince, for, asking me to do such.
Okay. And thank you to those of you who have been listening to this fascinating story. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make it a great day. Peace.